Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Hopefully everything's working properly and you can actually see me and hear me. Let me know if anything doesn't work. So for the past, 24 hours or so, the world has been looking at this map, and there's a lot of people who are upset by it, and rightfully so. I want to share with you some things that I found enlightening over the past 24 hours. I want to also share some of the things we've learned in the past 3 months, covering this election and trying to figure out how to go about fighting for equal rights. So first off, a lot of people have been looking at this map, and I think looking at it all night is scary. There's no doubt about that. Looking at this and trying to figure out who's going to win the next state, it's not helpful. It just gets your anxiety rushing. So all night I've been looking at this instead. It's called the exit polls. This is where the real data is. Now, of course, parties have a lot more information than this, but this is where the data is for us to learn from. I want to address something first, though. There's a lot of people in our country who are hurt right now. There's a lot of people worldwide that are hurt right now. Many countries were relying on Kamala Harris winning. Many countries will suffer because Donald Trump won. That is not questionable. That's just the facts of what we're dealing with right now. I've seen a lot of people in the past couple hours, especially, mocking Harris supporters. That's not something we did in 2020. That's not something we did when Obama won. But there's a good reason why Kamala Harris lost last night, and it's not because of Republicans. We can sit here and say all we want that, this was a campaign from the beginning that Trump supporters really felt emboldened by, right? They were always going to vote for Trump. You might have some defectors that said, hey, maybe this is too much for us. Maybe an insurrection on our Capitol was too much. But really, this comes down to Democrats. Yes, yesterday, during the day when polls were open, my husband and I voted for Kamala Harris. My father voted for Kamala Harris. I wish more people in my life voted for Kamala Harris. But I voted for a lot of things. I discussed that in a previous episode. Yesterday, there were a lot of bomb threats made by Russia to polling places. And so they had to shut down certain ones. They had to, keep them open late. And that might have scared some people from going to vote. But I don't think it scared too many people. I think it's mostly people knew these were baseless claims to make a bomb threat. They were hearing that it was coming from Russia. They were knowing that they were baseless. And even so, it was, we need to vote no matter what. Because there's a lot on the line yesterday. So I don't think it was that. I think the answer is in these exit polls. And I think it was Democrats who actually, unbelievably, wanted Donald Trump to win. I'm not going to say everyone, because obviously, there's plenty of Democrats that wanted her to win. She won 67.1 million votes. So 67.1 million people wanted her to win. But 72 million didn't. And you might ask yourself, well, look at the results from 2020. Let's just look this up for a second. 2020 election map. If we look this up, there were a lot of people who voted for Kamala Harris and for Joe Biden. If we look at this map, a lot of the states that Kamala Harris had a stronghold in 2020 with Joe Biden, she lost. She's even losing Nevada and Arizona. She'll probably win Maine when all said and done here. So the question that a lot of us start to ask is, how did this happen and where do we go from here? Well, how did this happen? That really is here in the national exit polls. Democrats are the reason this is a hard day for a lot of us. A lot of Democrats felt like they didn't need to vote. I'm not trying to victim blame. I'm trying to say, look at the data here. The data is important. The longer we wait to look at the data, the harder it's going to be. So that's why I wanted to do this today, right? So Trump voters, the Republicans, 99.9% of them were always going to vote for Trump. We saw that they voted for Trump in 2016, 2020, and 2024 here. Nothing really changed, maybe a couple thousand here and there that defected or said, hey, this Puerto Rico joke is a little too far for me, right? It kind of made a lot of us, in a reporter sense, ask, why this? You know, why was the comedian in New York City, why was that the final straw for some Republicans to not vote for Trump? Trump has said a lot of racist things for years, from 2015 and even before, you know, like he's the guy that put a full page ad in, what was it, New York Times or something like that. Just to like be racist. Like imagine the money it must take to just sponsor an ad in New York Times, a full page just to be racist. Like that's who we're talking about here. He was always racist. Why all of a sudden is the comedian the thing that was hired for this event? Why was he, you know, the final straw? We've had a super chat. Thank you so much for your super chat, by the way. Once he takes office, how long do you think it will be until blue states will no longer be safe for trans people? That's a difficult one. I think they're safe for right now. But it's going to be... Project 2025 is a very, very scary thing. And once you start seeing a couple moves towards Project 2025, which could happen first day or could happen, 2 years into his presidency. So I think once you start seeing those first signs, then it's like, oh yeah, things are looking bad. But we're going to be talking about how to fight against that in just a few moments. So let's look at the data. I think it's really, really important to do this on any election, whether it's local or whatever, right? So most males voted for Donald Trump. Like over here is who actually voted for Donald Trump, who voted for Kamala Harris. If you can see that on my screen, hopefully you can. So most men voted for Donald Trump, 55%. 53% of females voted for Kamala Harris. Number one, you believe he will actually get rid of elections. He'll try. He tried in 2020 here's the thing. We'll have a peaceful transition of power to Donald Trump because we have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in charge right now. But after that, I don't know. He's going to absolutely try to stay in power as long as he can beyond the 4 years, but I just don't know if Congress or Supreme Court will let him do that. Right now, as it stands, because of yesterday's election, we have a House and a Senate that is controlled by Republicans, mostly Trump Republicans. So we have House, Senate, Supreme Court, and presidency all controlled by Donald Trump right now, as of January 20th, 2025. So it's going to really take the midterm elections in 2026 to see if we can change Congress to being Democratic, and then finally we'll see if we'll get rid of him in 2026. He said he's not running again, but, you know, just because he says he's not running again doesn't mean he's going to try to, you know, either not going to lie and just run again anyway, or he's just not going to run again and he's just going to keep the presidency because he controls everything, you know? Excuse me. So we know that 45% of females voted for Donald Trump. That to me is the first real sign this election was never going to go in Harris's favor. You would think, after all the women's suffrage for so many years trying to fight for the right to vote, the first opportunity they had to vote for a female president that wasn't Hillary Clinton, which was a terrible choice in the first place, you would think they would go, no problem, let me vote for Harris, you know? And yet 45% of females, after Roe v. Wade, voted against their own rights and voted for Donald Trump. We see that a majority of white people voted for Donald Trump. A majority of Black, Hispanic, Latino, Asian voted for Kamala Harris. But 13% of Black people voted for Donald Trump. 46% of Hispanic and Latinos voted for Donald Trump. 39% of Asians voted for Donald Trump. They voted against their own interest here. We've heard from Hispanic and Latino people across the country who've said, oh, don't worry, I'm here legally. Donald Trump will not deport me or won't even try. He will know the difference between me and someone that's here illegally. And it's like, does he really know the difference? Will he know will he send police that are really capable of knowing the difference? Or are they just going to say, you know what, every Hispanic person, every Black person, every Asian, you're deported now? Donald Trump has said in the past he's going to deport everyone in the country who's not a Christian nationalist. I'm not a Christian nationalist. My husband's not. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But here's the thing. They voted for him anyway, even though he said how much racist stuff. So it kind of has to be a situation where you go, you know what? This is the bed that you made. This is the bed that we all voted for. So now we have to live with it, right? There's a lot of people, Black, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, and other, who voted against their own interest here. And I don't see anything. I get that he was all for, you know, like straight white men, right? But what was he going to do? Like, what promises was Trump making that enticed Black, Hispanic, Latino, and Asian people? Like, what did he say that was so appealing to them? What did he say that was so appealing to females? He said he's going to strip all rights away from females and make it so there's a national, a national database where he can tell who is getting what procedure done or what's happening with you and your doctor. Like, literally, these are things that he's working on right now, and his team is working on right now. Like, what was so appealing for 45% of females to vote for Donald Trump? Like, you're voting against your own interest, and I don't get that. Like, look, I'm a fiscal conservative. I want the national debt to come down, but I also understand there are a lot more important things right now. We are dealing with a man who committed treason against the country. He is a terrorist. He is probably the biggest threat to our democracy and our country since the inception of our country. Even when you had the Civil War, you had people fighting on both sides, but Donald Trump has convinced 70-some million people that he's the best thing in the world, that he's their savior, that he's their God. And I just don't understand. Like, imagine what you'll do for a man that is your God. You know, that's what he convinced people of. When we look at age group is another thing that really shocked us last night. 43% of 18 to 29-year-olds voted for Donald Trump. What was he promising young people? Like, nothing. I don't get that number right there. 30 to 44-year-olds, 48% of them voted for Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump, I get it. 45 to 64, 54% went to him, 65 and over. Yeah, his crowd is an older crowd. But why did 43% of 18-year-olds and 48% of 30-year-olds vote for him? He promised them nothing. Like, nothing. Why would you vote against your own interest when basically one person is saying, look, I'm going to make this world better for you. And then you have Donald Trump who says, I'm not going to promise you anything, but they vote for him anyway. It made no sense to a lot of us. When we look at, scroll down here, education, this was, oh my God. So hands down, a lot of people did vote for both sides here, right? Never attended college. These are not surprising results on the top here. Those who never attended college, 63% of them voted for Donald Trump, 35% voted for Kamala Harris. Attended college but never received a degree, 51% voted for Donald Trump. Like, yeah, it kind of fit into a lot of our mindset of like, look, his crowd is uneducated and then they fall for all these lies, right? That's understandable, right? Like, we always knew Republicans didn't have the degrees that everyone else has. What surprised a lot of us was associate's degree, which I actually have. 56% of those with an associate's degree voted for Donald Trump. 45% with a bachelor's degree voted for him. 38% with an advanced degree or other bachelor's degree voted for him. That's an alarming number of people who are well educated enough to do their own research and still voted for him. Look, I'm not saying that you have to be well educated. I'm saying, like, my husband never went to college, but he has a fantastic job and he's an incredible person. He's super, super smart, and I love talking with him. You don't need an education, but I'm just shocked by the people that have the education, learned how to do fact checking, learned how to, be a critical thinker, and still voted for him. I don't get that. And when we talk about, no matter how you voted today, do you usually think of yourself as a Democrat? 4% still voted for Trump, even though they consider themselves Democrat. You're not Democrat. You're not even a Republican. You're a maggot. What was it? 46% of independents voted for Donald Trump. What was he promising you? Genuinely, what was he promising you that got you to vote for him? Like, I don't get it. Family income, under 30,000, Trump got 46% of their votes. 30,000 to 49,000, 53%. 50 to 99,000, 51% got his vote. So a majority of people from $30,000 to $100,000 income voted for Donald Trump. What was he promising you? Like, he was promising, like, okay, let's look at the tax bill, right? When you look at the tax, he promised everyone a tax cut, and he got them a tax cut, right? So his new tax plan, when it was put into law back when he was president the first time, it got everyone, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, chat, $500 or something like that in lower federal income tax. $500. If you make, I think it's like less than $400,000 a year. So $500. He bought your vote for $500, right? Just think how sad that is. Then, if you're rich, he gave you thousands upon thousands in tax cuts. But the problem with government is the money is coming from somewhere no matter what. You can cut taxes $500 for every person in America. But then the states are funded by the federal government in large things like grants and stuff like that. So the state is like, hey, what are we going to do for money now? Because there's less money to go around. So they say, all right, the states have all said, okay, we're going to raise our taxes because there's less money coming from the feds, so we need to raise our state tax. Then the locals like, hey, the state's not getting as much money, so we have to raise our rates even more. And also, the local governments got screwed over by Donald Trump everywhere he went. So there were millions upon millions of dollars that Trump's campaign never paid back to those small towns that they needed to then get from the next year's taxes. So next year's taxes went up because Donald Trump came to town and they had unreimbursed expenses that campaigns should pay for. So now your local and your state taxes went up, but your federal went down, and all these people are like, oh, I got $500. Yeah, you got $500 from the feds, but then you paid thousands more in state and local to compensate for that. So let's just put that out there. So there were really not smart people looking at their finances and voted for Donald Trump. I don't get it. He did nothing for your taxes. His economy was like the worst in the country's history, and yet people voted for him anyway. Labor unions. This is another thing that really got me. Kamala Harris was the only one fighting for labor union rights, and yet 45% of people that are in a labor union voted for Donald Trump. Why? He's literally wrote a plan that busts unions up. Like, he doesn't want unions, and yet you voted for him anyway. You know, it makes no sense to me. Here's one thing that actually does make sense to me, right? Out of all the money, or out of all the data from this election, this is something that actually makes sense. So 63% of Protestant or other Christian and 58% of Catholics voted for Donald Trump. He's been promising a lot of like Catholic heavy things of he's going to make Christianity mandatory in all people, which is unconstitutional, but he still promised it anyway. So literally this is reflective of that. Jewish people voted for Kamala Harris mostly. Something else or none voted for her. That made sense to me. I don't understand what 34% of something else or 26% of none voted for Trump, because I don't know what he promised you. But that data right there makes sense to me. Christians voted for him. Everyone else voted for her. That makes sense, right? That's something we kind of expected because of the promises both were making. Do you have any children under 18 living in your home? 53% of those who have a child under 18 living at home voted for Donald Trump. He literally promised to take away the entire education system. What? Why do you think Donald Trump is better for you as a parent? I don't get that. I mean, he's mandating Christianity in all kids, and he's taking away the entire education system. Like, he's promised to dismantle the education system in America. So, like, what could you possibly, as a parent, want in Donald Trump? Thank you for the order, by the way, whoever just placed an order on professorpride.com. Just got a notification. We'll ship that out tomorrow. So I don't get that. Those who are not parents, let me see here. Those who are not parents, 50% voted for Kamala Harris, 48% voted for Donald Trump. So if you don't have kids, I don't get that. Like, literally, J.D. Vance was out there saying that if you don't have kids, you should get less of a vote than everyone else that does have kids. So if you don't have kids, in theory, 100% of people who don't have kids should be voting for Kamala Harris. You know, I don't get that. Are you currently married? Donald Trump has promised to get rid of marriage for gay people. And, he's not really great on marriage. And he's had 5 wives. So then 56% of those who are married voted for him. And I'm like, that makes no sense to me. If you're married, you should be voting for Kamala Harris. But whatever. Again, didn't make sense to me. But again, most married men and women voted for Donald Trump. Non-married men voted for Donald Trump. And non-married women voted for Kamala Harris. That makes sense to me, right? Of like, non-married women are for her. I don't understand why married women are for Donald Trump. There's no one that's married. There's no woman that should be voting for Donald Trump at all. I don't get that. He promised you nothing. He promised to take all your rights away. Are you gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender? Well, I'm gay. There's a question for me. Out of those who said yes, 86% voted for Kamala Harris, which makes perfect sense to me. I don't understand why it's not 100. 13% of gay, bisexual, and transgender people voted for Donald Trump. He is literally promised to imprison and deport anyone in the country who's gay. He's literally promised to make being transgender illegal. He has come after transgender rights thousands of times. Why would you vote for Donald Trump? I don't get that. There is nothing in the world that should make you vote for Donald Trump as an LGBTQ person. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Those who were straight and cisgender voted massively for him. So we can tell how many allies are in the country, by the way. The allies of our community are really 45%. Okay? No matter what someone says of like, oh, I have a gay friend. No, you fucking don't. 45% of you do. That's it. You know? Have you ever served in the U.S. military? 65% of those who served in the military voted for Donald Trump. Keep in mind, Donald Trump has started how many wars? Like, in his final days in office, after January 6th, he was very afraid of losing. He was so afraid of losing the election that he decided, all right, we're going to screw Joe Biden, because he was so mad about losing. And so Donald Trump, according to every military official in the country at the time, told the military to go send a nuclear bomb to China and blow up China, start a nuclear war, just so World War III can be blamed on Joe Biden. Because he was going to do it in his final days of his term. That way, the aftermath was something Joe Biden had to deal with. That was it. That was his whole reason. He was going to kill millions of people just to say, it's Joe Biden's fault. We're looking at a war in Ukraine. And there are a lot of people who think we're going to have to eventually get physically involved, not just sending weapons to Ukraine, in order to defeat Russia. Russia has been promised by Donald Trump that as soon as Donald Trump gets into office, all the aid for Ukraine stops, which means Russia can just walk all over and just take over any country they want. Donald Trump has promised to get United States out of NATO. So, hey, I guess Russia can do whatever the hell they want with no consequences. But, of course, 65% of those who have served our country, have risked their lives fighting for our freedoms, are like, you know what? You committing treason and trying to overthrow the government that I fought my entire life for, not important. I'm going to vote for you anyway. Makes no sense to me. I don't get it. 34% of those who have served in the military voted for Kamala Harris. Those are the true Americans that I understand and that I respect. You can risk your life all you want to, but if you vote for the man who literally tried to overthrow it and start wars, then I don't know how you were even in the military. Is this the first year you have ever voted? This is really alarming. 56% of those who never voted before, first time ever, voted for Donald Trump. So he somehow convinced you to register to vote and to vote for him. What promise did he make to you? He didn't do anything. His whole first term, he didn't do anything but hate the people that I guess you hate too. I don't get that. And those who voted before, 50% voted for him. Really, when you think about it, Donald Trump he might have lost a couple thousand here or there of people who voted before, but he gained not only people that have never voted ever before and younger people, but he gained old Democrat people that turned into Republican votes here. Do you think the condition of the national economy is excellent or good? Mostly went with Kamala. Not so good or poor. Bad. What is Donald Trump going to do for you? Kamala Harris promised to bring down the cost of living. She promised to try to create regulations on these companies for price gouging and inflation, which is all caused by these big companies, by the way. The president has no power over it. Like, the president doesn't say, hey, I want the price of oil to go up. The president doesn't say, hey, I want your loaf of bread to be more expensive today. That's not a decision the president makes. It's literally these companies. So regulations need to be put in place. Donald Trump has promised to put no regulations on these companies. Let them regulate themselves because that's worked out so well. But I guess if you don't look at the economy well, the woman trying to fix the economy is obviously someone you don't want to vote for. Let's look at inflation. A severe hardship or moderate hardship. Oh no, your loaf of bread cost $1 more now than it used to. So let me vote for Donald Trump because the entire country's fate is not really important compared to my dollar for bread, But if you're not suffering at all, I guess vote for Kamala Harris. Again, I don't get those numbers. Like, if you're trying to make the cost of living come down and you have a lot of hardship right now, Kamala Harris is the person for you. I mean, she's the one that is still wanting food stamps to survive. She's the one that wants to bring grocery prices down. Donald Trump literally said he wants to get rid of food stamps entirely and get rid of any subsidy entirely. So, like, I guess 74% of people with severe hardship didn't hear that part. Do you think America's best days are in the past? Mostly Republicans thought that, let's get our country back. I saw a lot of signs around of like, oh, we're going back to the time where we were so much better off, or like, want me back yet? It's like, no, I don't. No one wants you back, but apparently America does. Best days are in the future. Mostly Kamala Harris supporters thought it was the best days are in the future. 40% said, hey, the best days are in the future with Donald Trump. That is so stupid. Okay, here's another really interesting one. Which one of these 5 issues mattered most in deciding how you voted for president? Foreign policy. Donald Trump was terrible on foreign policy. He literally physically pushed world leaders to the side because he wanted to be in the front. Donald Trump has insulted other world leaders, has mispronounced other countries, and yet somehow he's better at foreign policy by that margin, 37 to 57. Kamala Harris is respected among other foreign leaders. Donald Trump was laughed at by the UN. Like, I don't get that. Abortion. Here's a really, really effed up one. 74% of those who think abortion was the number one issue voted for Kamala Harris. Great. Okay. Why is that not 100? 25% of people who are basically admitting that they want abortion to be legal voted for the guy that wants to make it illegal and already pushed the Supreme Court to make it illegal. I don't get that. I don't get that number at all. Help me understand that one. The economy, 80% voted for Donald Trump. We have the best economy we've ever had in our country right now. Inflation is not the president's fault or Congress's fault. It's the company's fault. They need to be regulated. We have the best economy. I don't understand why 80% went with him. Immigration. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden had a plan to stop illegal immigration. They were working in a bipartisan measure to get it done. Donald Trump told them, hey, don't pass that bill yet because I'm not in power. And he wanted to take credit for it. So 90% of Americans believed Donald Trump that Kamala Harris has a terrible policy on immigration, even though she had a plan that Donald Trump kiboshed. Here's one that really gets me. The state of our democracy. 80% of people who thought democracy was the most important thing voted for Kamala Harris. 18% voted for Donald Trump. The democracy that Donald Trump tried to overthrow and committed treason against the United States of America to get rid of, they thought he was the best candidate for them. And that was the main reason they voted for him. I don't get it. Has the ability to lead. Mostly went for Donald Trump, even though Kamala Harris has been the president of the United States, by the way. I don't know if you know this. Kamala Harris is the first official woman president of the entire United States. She was legally president for 85 minutes while Joe Biden was undergoing a procedure and anesthesia. So she's literally been the president, but she doesn't have the ability to lead. Of course not, even though she's been leading her entire life. cares about people like me. Donald Trump, who's a billionaire, thanks to stealing money from the taxpayers. Sure, I guess he cares about 25% of you. Mostly your poor, uneducated people are like, hey, he obviously cares for me. He's just stealing millions of dollars from all of us. Of course he cares about me. Has good judgment. 16% of people thought that Donald Trump has good judgment, even though he tried to start a nuclear war just to have a giant middle finger to Joe Biden. Great judgment. Can bring needed change. 74% said him. You know what? I'll give him that one. He will bring change. Doesn't say good or bad, but whatever. I don't get it. Okay, so here's one that the comments are probably going to kill me for. The U.S. support for Israel. Last night it was incredibly funny to me watching like all the election results come in while watching the chat of everyone going like free Palestine. This is the reason I think Kamala Harris lost, is Israel. Hands down. Let me just be clear, okay? Just because we need to be clear on this one. Can I transition here? Okay, let me be clear on this one. Russia was fighting a war with Ukraine. They started that war. They started to lose that war, and they started to look for other options of how they can, gain some ground in Ukraine. Because America was definitely behind Ukraine and helping them, what about Project 2025? Oh, God. I don't even want to think about that. So much. Oh, there's so... I will tell you, the sad part is I've read Project 2025. It was written by Donald Trump's team. It sounds like Donald Trump's speeches. I know that it's terrible. There's a lot in there. A lot that we didn't even have time to discuss because there was so many pressing issues to talk about. We only talked about the LGBTQ side and like women's rights side. We didn't really like get into like Donald Trump promised to get rid of Social Security entirely, which affects a lot of old people. He promised to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid. It's going to be a legal fight if he tries, but he owns most of the federal judges. So it's really up for debate whether if they finally say, you know what, we're going to stand on the side of the law, which sometimes they have done and they've gone against him, or if they're saying, look, we're a Trump loyalist and no matter what he wants is fine with us. It's going to be a very interesting legal fight, but it's going to be a legal fight on everything he tries to do. The courts are going to be very, very busy for the next couple of years. So Russia was losing in Ukraine, and they decided, hey, we want to split United States resources so that Ukraine doesn't have as much weaponry to fight us. So they went to Iran and said, hey, you guys like starting trouble. And Iran's like, hey, yeah, that's us. Trouble in a nutshell. So they funded the Hamas and the Houthis to be the terrorists that they are, and decided to attack an unwarranted attack against Israel. Israel responds, and they're like, hey, you killed thousands of our citizens. You raped, you murdered, you set on fire, and you just burned babies, like all this terrible you took thousands of hostages. And then Israel's like, okay, I guess we're at war now. So they respond. Hamas does all of this propaganda to show the world, hey, we're at war and we're being attacked. We didn't do anything to be attacked except October 7th, but we're being attacked by Israel. This is what Kamala Harris lost the election for. The saddest part of it all is that both sides know right from wrong here. They're both on the same side. This is the one issue that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump actually agree on. One thing, the only thing. So all these college kids go out on campuses and they're like, how dare Israel kill civilians? They're not killing civilians. Hamas is the elected government of the Palestinian people. I want to be very careful about my words here because I don't want to give credit to a country that's not a country. So, when we talk about these things, we have to talk about how Hamas addresses their military personnel. For the most part, Hamas is a all-inclusive and government to the military. Like, a lot of people that are in the country are members of the military or help the government in some way. There's not much industry there other than military. So if you're not a member of the military, your family doesn't do very well in that country. Or if you don't support the military in some way, like food, whatever resources they need, right? So Hamas is elected, and now they're, am I excusing genocide? I would never excuse genocide. I think it's terrible that genocide is happening against the Israel people. That's just a fact. So here's the thing, right? Hamas, unprovoked attack against Israel, and then they dress their military members up as civilians. So that way, in all the videos, even when they're dead, it looks like, oh my God, all these civilians are dead. So then, unbelievably, the world is like, oh, hey, we don't care that Hamas, this terrorist organization, hides underneath school buildings and hospitals because they're a terrorist organization. You don't see any other military in the world doing that, by the way, other than like Russia, Iran, and terrorists like Hamas and the Houthis. Militaries like the United States military have military compound bases that are very secure, but they defend themselves, right? You don't see U.S. military members hiding underneath hospitals because then the hospital becomes a target. You don't see U.S. military members. It's against the Geneva Convention, by the way, not to have your military members dress as military members with your country's flag on their shoulder. That is against the Geneva Convention, because then you don't know who the target is, right? So when Israel is fighting, they're like, oh, look at all these people dressed as civilians who all just happen to have guns pointed at us. Now, if you saw a civilian with a gun pointed towards you coming out of a hospital, I'd be like, hey, you're not a civilian. You're just dressed as one. That way, when you die, you get to be used as propaganda. That's how it's going in the Gaza Strip. There are civilians being killed on both sides. On both sides. But Israel isn't putting their people, their military people, in civilian clothing. So, you know, one side. So my point here is Kamala Harris promised to hopefully get a ceasefire, and she was under attack from a lot of Democrats who thought she's doing a terrible job. It's like, We can't control another country. No matter how hard we try, we are the police of the world. The U.S. military is the police of the world, apparently. But, okay, yeah, you're going to be banned. Israel should be the fuck. Yeah, you can go to hell off. Saying that Israel shouldn't exist. Israel is a country. It is an actual country, not like the territory of Palestinian people, which is not. It should exist because it was voted in the UN as a country. So, weird people. What I will say here is Kamala Harris was trying to get a ceasefire. She was trying to get the people of Hamas to sort of come to the table and agree to give the hostages back. She was trying to do that. She's so far not had much success because Hamas just wants terrorism. They just want to kill everyone. Everyone's saying from the river to the sea is condoning violence, is condoning terrorism to kill all the Jews. And the fun part of that sentence is it's not the whole sentence, by the way. It really means they want to kill all the Jews and they want to take over all the land to Germany, including Germany, by the way. Like, the German people are like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But people in Gaza are literally starving. We're sending them aid. We're literally sending aid to the people of Gaza and the military of Gaza. And we're sending aid to Israel to defend themselves. We're funding both sides of this war right now. And a lot of countries are, which is crazy. The Hamas should be is an elected, democratically elected government, so they should be supporting their own people. Unfortunately, we gave them all the supplies they need to build their own infrastructure. They decided to melt down pipes and build bombs. So they don't have the infrastructure to support themselves. So the United States is like, hey, we're going to continue to fund you no matter what. Stupid. Anyway, so it's alarming. A lot of Democrats were against Kamala Harris for the Israel issue. What you need to understand is Donald Trump was also on the side of Israel. Netanyahu genuinely said that he wanted Donald Trump to win. Donald Trump, in response to this, said that Netanyahu should have the power to carpet bomb the entire area of Gaza and kill everyone, not just military people. So Donald Trump was the scorched earth policy on this, right? If you wanted a ceasefire, Kamala Harris was the president to vote for. If you wanted scorched earth and for Gaza not to even exist on a map and not even have a building left to stand on or hide underneath for terrorists, but if you wanted them to have anything left, if you didn't want them to have anything left, Donald Trump was your candidate, right? So I was voting for Kamala Harris because I wanted a ceasefire. I wanted all the hostages returned. I wanted those who committed atrocities against Israel to be held accountable. Donald Trump was the candidate to say, hey, just send nukes on Gaza. Just send nukes against Hamas. Literally, that was his solution. So if you're a Democrat and you wanted a ceasefire, Kamala Harris was the way to do that, not Donald Trump. But as we get back into the data here, let's get back into the data because it's important. "67% of Democrat voters that voted for Kamala Harris thought her support for Israel was too strong. 30% think that Donald Trump would be too strong, but voted for him anyway. 15% said that her support isn't strong enough, but I'm going to vote for her anyway. And Republicans, 82% said his support was not strong enough, but voted for him anyway. 59% of Democrats who voted for Kamala Harris says it's about right. What we learned from this, Palestine is not a country. It doesn't exist. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. All these people in the comments are like, Palestine. What? Where is that on a map? Sorry, I don't see that one. Oh my God. Hey, I'm gonna create a country. I'm gonna call it LGBT land. It's literally just this room. And now I'm a sovereign nation, right? Right? I can attack anyone I want, right? Yeah. Secondly, the Palestinian people are already free. They voted for Hamas to be their government. Yeah. So people saying free Palestine, you're saying free a country that doesn't exist, that's the people that are already existing that are free. So many questions for you. Anyway, Pridetopia. Let's create a country, everyone. Let's just create a brand new country, say that Donald Trump is not our president, and do what they did in 2020 to us, right? And I'll tell you what, let's overthrow the government, because apparently there are no consequences. Anyway, I'm joking, by the way, for the FBI and CIA that are watching this. I'm joking. Please don't do that. They voted for Hamas because they wanted Hamas to be their government. Period. You're right. It's dumb defending a country that doesn't exist. So I'm not going to say if it should be a two-state solution. I'm just saying that the one side shouldn't want the other one to not exist. That's all I'm going to say. It's a mess. It really is a mess. The Middle East is a problem child for centuries now. No one's been able to solve it, because you have the one side that's like, let's murder everyone, and the other side's like, we just want to exist. We're not trying to kill you. Every time you come here, you try to kill us, but it's kind of weird to vote for Kamala Harris, know that Donald Trump has the same exact opinion that Israel should have the right to defend itself, and he kind of wants to go scorched earth, and then I'm like, oh my God, I actually agree with Donald Trump on something. One thing I agree with Donald Trump on. Because Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are on the same side here, and they're both supporting Israel and saying that they should have the right to defend themselves, I'm here saying oh my God, I actually agree with both parties on this one. But it's just interesting. But yeah, I think a lot of Democrats voted against Kamala, not knowing that Trump was even worse for their cause. All these protests, violent protests on college campuses, I will say, did not help her. All these people that were trying to interrupt her speeches, it's you came to a rally just to interrupt her, to get a sentence out of her that you wanted to be, you wanted to have a gotcha moment on Kamala Harris, and I don't get it. I really don't understand why so many creators went against Kamala Harris in the final days. I'll show you an example of what I mean, right? Let's go to YouTube, because this is interesting. I like how you're all like, oh, let me share the... I'm about ready to ban all those people. Let me share a flag of a country that doesn't exist. So let's look at. I know you're all like, "Oh my God, you have the weirdest subscriptions." Let's look up Adam Conover. Right. This really upset me when I saw this yesterday. Why I'm not worried about the election. The final moment that you have to convince your audience, hey, Kamala Harris might not be perfect on every single issue that we talk about, but please don't vote for Donald Trump because he literally will take all of our rights away. He creates a video of why I'm not worried about the election. You should have been worried, Adam. And if you weren't, good fucking whoop-de-doo for you. I'm glad you have so much money and power that you don't care, right? Another one that really got my pennies in a bunch here is John Oliver. Huge fucking platform, 9.6 million subscribers on YouTube. He's on HBO. He creates a video, Election 2024. It's a freaking hit piece on Kamala Harris. Just talking about how terrible her policies are of like, oh, look, she doesn't want genocide in Israel, so she's a terrible person. Like, that's literally what he was saying. And it's like, okay, but vote for her anyway because she's better than Donald Trump. Like, okay. Everyone knows that she's better than Donald Trump, but you're convincing people that she's not, which is terrible. Look at the interesting stories that he's had recently. I mean, wait, did he get rid of any? It'd be really interesting if he did. When we talk about, where's it at? I watched it on HBO. I didn't watch it here. That's the problem. So I'm looking for something that's like here, but it's like, he's also been uploading all of his old. It's kind of just interesting where for the longest time, John Oliver had, his show was owned by HBO, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets all this, funding to like, please share evidence about there being a genocide in Israel. It's called looking it up on the internet, and I'm not going to show those pictures on here because then I'll get, taken down by YouTube, because they're terrible war pictures. And you're not allowed to show that violent of pictures on YouTube. But it's kind of weird that all of a sudden John Oliver got like these massive deals of like, let's renew the show forever. And now he owns the show entirely. And HBO has never sold off one of their most popular shows to one of their own hosts before. So it's kind of weird that John Oliver owns his own show now instead of HBO owning it. It's almost like John Oliver got a shit ton of money from some country, Iran, or China or Russia, and now he owns his own show so he can talk about a hit piece on the West Bank of like how terrible Israel's doing, and even though they're defending themselves, let's look for more because it's fun here. When we talk about I mean, he's uploading a ton of his old stuff from years and years ago. Let's see UFOs. I mean, he talks about some weird stuff, and I do genuinely like his show most times. Let's see. When he talked about, Israel-Hamas war. It was, if you watch the actual show on HBO, almost every week since the Hamas attacked Israel, you will see that he's talked about Israel being terrible over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, and all of the facts that he's citing the source of, they're coming from Hamas. Like, oh, they've killed how many people Okay, where are you getting that information from, John Oliver? You're getting it from Hamas, who might have a tendency to lie about it. Oh my God. So what I'm saying is, it's kind of weird that they were all doing hit pieces on Kamala Harris literally the day before the election. And it's like, really? You think that Donald Trump will do better for the people of Gaza? You really think that? When he said repeatedly that Israel should just carpet bomb everything. Like that's what you want. That's what you voted for. Because remember, this was the biggest issue for America, for Democrats, right? An issue that a lot of people went on college campuses and destroyed their college campuses over. That's what is most important to Democrats. And that is why they voted against Kamala Harris. That is the number one reason. The propaganda from Hamas and Russia and China convinced these younger people, which is why you see the younger people, and especially college graduates, it all kind of ties to this one issue. Yeah. So, it's funny you say no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. The Palestinian people murder gay and trans people just for being gay or trans. Israel is the only country in the entire Middle East that has equal rights and protections for LGBTQ people. The only one. The rest of the countries in the Middle East literally execute LGBT people just for being LGBTQ. That's it. No questions. They just murder you. So all these people saying gays for Gaza are literally like saying chickens for KFC. You know, like, it's so stupid. Like, even if you said, okay, Israel's committing, doing some bad here, because they're not committing atrocities. Israel's doing some bad work here because they're defending themselves and they're hitting military targets, right? Like, even if you wanted to say that, it's like, well, then why would gays be for Gaza still? Because they murder gay people just for being gay. Like, why would you ever stand with them for any reason? They murder you. Go there, find out, you know, like, it's a terrible place. So when we look at this, college students who were on the campuses, they voted for Donald Trump in record numbers. Young people voted for Donald Trump in way more numbers than you saw in 2020. When we look at, let's go down to married, non-married people voted for Donald Trump in record numbers. You had LGBT people voting for Donald Trump in unheard of numbers. Why are gay people voting for Donald Trump? Because they believe Gaza's being attacked unwarranted. First-time voters voted for Donald Trump more than they voted for Kamala Harris. Young people voted for Donald Trump because they were convinced that he had better policies to handle the Middle East, even though he has said he's going to allow Israel to just carpet bomb with nuclear bombs if they have to. Kamala Harris was at least saying, let's get a ceasefire, let's get all the hostages back, and let's hold those accountable that murdered Israeli people. Let's do that. That's some common ground we can find. But that wasn't good enough for these Democrats. And they're like, oh, if Palestine isn't just made a new country and they're given every resource imaginable, even though they were already given every resource imaginable, and they decided to melt it down and make bombs. so that they can murder more Israeli people. I don't get what you want here. Like, Democrats want Jewish people to just die. Yeah, like, I don't get it. I don't get these numbers. Other than literally the question of, other than the Israeli issue, none of these numbers make sense to me. None of them. It's the biggest policy that they've talked about, and she kept being interrupted. And all these college kids were like, we know everything. These adults that have been in politics and policy for their entire lives, they know nothing. I, as a college kid, know way more. It's like, no, you don't. Like, I was in college once. I used to think I knew everything. Then I got some lived experience and I started learning. Look, I'm not saying you shouldn't fight for what you believe in. I'm just saying stand on the right side of history. Don't vote against your own interest. It makes no sense to vote against your own interest. I don't get it. If you believe in the economy needs to be saved, Donald Trump had a terrible economy. He stole hundreds of millions of dollars from the American taxpayers, so he wasn't your candidate. If you believe in women's rights, Donald Trump wanted to take all of your rights away and go back to a time when you had no rights, so he wasn't your candidate. If you believe that Gaza should have its own country ship, state ship, Donald Trump wasn't your candidate. Kamala Harris wasn't there either, but at least you can fight harder to convince her. I don't get it. If you're LGBT, one of the most alarming things I saw here is LGBT people voting for Donald Trump. He's literally passed hundreds and hundreds of policies against LGBTQ rights in his presidency. But people voted for him anyway. You say vote for a third party. That also hurt a lot of Harris' hopes here. When we look at the results and the official polls, let's get to it here. The people that voted third party, I promise you, like, if you go into the numbers, right, you're probably not going to see enough to get 5-point-something million people that voted for a third party, right? Even if every person that voted for a third party went and voted for Harris, it doesn't make up that difference. Donald Trump always had his strongholds, right? He was always going to have Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. He was always going to have this Bible Belt, right? He was always going to have this little thing at the top, right? Over here, Nevada and Arizona, a lot of immigrants live there. But they're both going red, by the way, massively. Look at them, right? Donald Trump is winning in Nevada. Donald Trump is winning in Arizona by massive margins. So he's going to win those two as well when the final tallies are all told. He was always going to have this. How did he gain Nevada and Arizona? How did he gain Colorado and New Mexico, where a lot of immigrants live too? How did he gain Georgia? How did he gain Pennsylvania? How did he gain Michigan and Wisconsin? Like, these are states that are notoriously blue. How did he gain them? Because a lot of Democrats in this area were convinced Donald Trump is for the protection of Gaza, even though he's said to carpet bomb them. Kamala Harris said she wants a ceasefire. So let's vote for Donald Trump, because Kamala Harris hasn't just said, let's just murder all the Jews. That's literally why these states have fallen. That's why these states are falling to Donald Trump. He always had his stronghold. Kamala Harris lost hers because Iran, Russia, China, and Hamas have shared the absolute worst propaganda the Democrats fell for. So where do we go from here? We go from here. I mean, you don't see them voting for Trump? But they did. Right? They did. 30%, 82%, 39%. That's a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump. A lot of young people voted for Donald Trump. He wasn't promising you anything. You just thought that Kamala Harris was bad. And I don't get it. It also has to do with the fact that a lot of, especially in Pennsylvania, let's look at that. That's where I'm from. When we look at Pennsylvania, Donald Trump won by 100,000 votes. A lot of Pennsylvanians, I will tell you from being on the ground, oh my God, he turned Erie County. Erie County has been a Democratic stronghold for ever. Anyway, so just weird. By the way, you can tell where the big cities are. Scranton's up here somewhere. Lehigh County is Allentown and Bethlehem. Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, and Philadelphia is Philadelphia area. This is Harrisburg area and Dauphin County. This is Center County, which is another big city where Penn State University is. Allegheny is where Pittsburgh is. So you can tell where the cities are. But I can tell you from being on the ground in Pennsylvania, a lot of the voters that voted for Donald Trump simply didn't vote for Kamala Harris because she's a woman. Period. We don't have the college campus life that other states do to be whatever for Gaza and voted for Donald Trump, right? But we do have a lot of people who just thought a woman shouldn't be president. That's it. She was a woman. That's it. I remember it was probably the best interview question and answer I've ever heard. Was from Jordan Klepper, who was interviewing this woman at and by the way, 33,000 votes. This is how you tell how. Okay, look at this. Jill Stein got 33,500. C. Oliver got 32,600, right? Let's just do some quick. 5, 4, 7. That's 66,220, right? 3,467,902 minus 3,337,772. She would have needed 130 votes to win, and Jill Stein and John Oliver together got 66,220. So even if all of these people voted for Kamala Harris, she still wouldn't have won Pennsylvania. It would have been better. I feel like a lot of Republicans were told, look, make it so this can't be rigged against us again, even though 2020 wasn't rigged against you. And they voted. They were encouraged to vote. Kamala Harris supporters might have said, hey, we just don't think a woman should be president in Pennsylvania. And so they just didn't vote. Didn't get out there. When we look at, when we look at how many people voted, let's look at that. We have, let's see. Oh, okay. 158 million people voted. Right? 158. Let's remember that number. Let's see. 72.8 plus 67.2. 139 million voted yesterday. So a hell of a lot less than 2020. So a lot of people did not show up to vote, and that is why Kamala Harris lost. It's another reason why. So it's just sad. So where do we go from here? Donald Trump officially won, right? Now, you're going to have Trump supporters for a week or so here who are just trying to rub it in our face. But you know what? This is what they chose. This is what a lot of Democrats chose, because not voting was also voting for Trump, because percentage-wise, Trump was going to win that. If Democrats went out and voted, great. If Democrats decided to stay home, then let's say you have a decision between 10 people, right? 5 of them are going to vote for Republican, 5 of them are going to vote for Democrat. But let's say 2 of the Democrats stay home. So now there's 8 people. But percentage-wise, Republican got more votes because they all went out and they went voting. So Republican won. So not voting or voting for a third party was a vote for Donald Trump. And that is unfortunately why she lost. I'm not even kidding. If someone can help me, a quadriplegic wheelchair bound queer, get to EU to my girlfriend, please help me. We're here for you. And we love you. What I will say here is, let me just switch back to our normal screen. I'm sorry. I'm doing this all live. Normally I have editors. What I will say is, thank you so much for the super chat, by the way. So much. It's super appreciated. Let me actually just heart you really quick. Thank you. It really does help. What's so crazy to me is, like, where do we go from here? And so what a lot of people have been what a lot of people have been asking today is where we go from here. I think we just let them gloat for a little bit. They're ruthless right now. We've never done this to them, by the way, but right now they are absolutely insane in how ruthless they are being. They're like trying to get on our nerves of, see, we told you we were winning. It's like, you don't outnumber us. You just outnumbered us yesterday because you discouraged enough Democrats not to go out and vote. And it's been pretty crappy for 24 hours, you know? It's a little terrifying to let them just go on this rant for a couple weeks. but we let them. That's, I think, the solution we have to have. We have to just let them go. And we need to stop saying fucking free Palestine, because it doesn't exist. And they're already free people. It's pissing me off so much. Anyway. They didn't sponsor this video. Anyway. Anyway, so my husband actually had a good suggestion here in his thinking today, is that we just let them go. See, when Donald Trump becomes president, a lot of people said, oh, look, he's not going to enact Project 2025. He said he knows nothing about it. A lot of people said, oh, look, he's not dangerous. He said he's not dangerous, even though he tried to overthrow the government. Even though he's committed treason, he's not dangerous. His own his own crew that he used to run with, his own people have said that they endorsed Kamala Harris. We didn't listen to them. We didn't listen to them. Right here, on screen, we didn't listen to them. So what do? We let them learn how bad it really is. And whenever Donald Trump starts enacting all these plans that he has, like Project 2025, deporting anyone that's not a Christian nationalist, when he starts all of this crap, we rub it in their face. And we say, make America great again, right? Donald Trump is the biggest threat to our country since the inception of our country. And he won by a landslide, just because he hates the same people that they do. I'm not even going to talk about the assassination attempts, because personally I feel like they were staged. If they were really attempts, maybe they wouldn't have missed. I think they missed on purpose, because Donald Trump did that back in 2016, I'm going to say, to get elected the first time. And yet here we are again, and everyone's like, oh my God, it happened again. And it's like, he's been doing this for a long time. And the worst part was, it was two Republicans. Two people tried to assassinate Donald Trump, and they were both a Republican. Like, your own party is trying to take you out. But they missed. The one didn't even, they got caught before, long before anything. Like, it was enough to be like, oh, wait, you're going to just let me be in this bush for, what was it, like 24 hours or some shit? So when we talk about this stuff, it did help his audience vote for him. It was like, oh, people are trying to take him out, so I need to go out and vote for him. That was the mentality behind the Republicans yesterday. Because if someone was trying to take out your God, your Savior, your Jesus, they wanted to help make sure that he was president. That's it. Like, it was terrible that those things happen, and we would never condone violence of any nature. But I don't think it was violence. I don't think it was, how should I say this? I don't think it was some people that were really mad at Trump. I think it was people that wanted Trump to win, so they did these acts knowing they could die. because they wanted to help their savior win. Because it made sure his audience went, oh my God, I need to vote because they're trying to assassinate him. It's your own party trying to assassinate you, first off. I mean, a lot of people were independent on this election of they couldn't decide. If you can't decide between a terrorist and a woman, that's how deep the sexism goes. Yeah, I'm about done with that. You're now in timeout, by the way. I'm just done. I'm done. Enough with the freak. Anyway, why are we supporting a country that doesn't exist? Anyway, and it's so weird of like all these Democrats who are out there and saying, oh, well, they've called Donald Trump a Nazi. And they've called, because Donald Trump has repeated Nazi lines. And he's like, but I'm saying it a different way. It's like, well, you're still saying it. Donald Trump has enacted plans that are Nazi-like. And he's gained the attention and, made friends with Nazis. And then everyone's like, on the Democratic side, oh, we need to vote because we cannot have a Nazi in power. And then immediately they're like, oh, these other terrorists are amazing. They're trying to invade and kill all Israelis. It's like, so you don't like one terrorist group, but you're like, this other terrorist group. Now they got the right idea. They want to murder all the Jews, just like the Nazis tried to do. And successfully killed 6 million of them. Like, you don't agree with murdering Jews if you're a Nazi because it was a terrible act. And I'm just saying hypothetically here, right? So the people that are for free Palestine, whatever the hell that means. So they're like, hey, these people that tried to murder all the Jews were terrible. But these other people trying to murder all the Jews, let me say free Palestine to them. Makes no sense. We've seen some dumb in the comments for a long time now. But I will say, it's so sad that Democrats did not turn up to vote for her like they turned up to vote for Joe Biden. And I cannot help but think it's either the Israeli issue over them trying to defend themselves, or it's literally just they couldn't decide if they wanted a woman president. They were that sexist. There's, I was going to say earlier, and I got interrupted by people. You know who you are that are timed out now. But there were a lot of people. One of the best interviews I've ever seen was by Jordan Klepper at a rally for Trump. And he asked a woman, he's like, out of curiosity, why are you voting for Trump? Oh, well, because he's a man. And Jordan Klepper's like, really? Like, what makes you think that having a woman president would be wrong? And this woman goes, well, women are too emotional. They can start a war. And Jordan's like, wait, you mean like every war ever started in the United States by men? But sure, a woman, would start wars like all the men did. Do I follow the news? Yes, I do follow the news. There's a lot of propaganda. I've explained this earlier in the video. There's a lot of propaganda out there by Hamas right now saying that how many civilians are killed. It's not civilians. Military targets are military targets. Sorry. Um, I'm, I'm thinking about joining the military and then hiding underneath a school building, dressing up as a civilian, and then getting mad when they target the school. How about, does that sound like a good idea to you? No, because no other country does it. No other military does it. But yet terrorists do. And for some weird reason, college students are like, oh my God, these videos are horrifying of all these people in civilian clothing that were holding guns moments ago. Anyway, yes, I support countries having the right to defend themselves. Yes, I do. Um, I don't support territories that are trying to overthrow the government that should control them. Anyway, but here we are. This is the results. So what we do is we just go on and let. Dude, you drank the Kool-Aid. Sorry that what the propaganda is coming from Israel. Israel does try to do some propaganda, but here's the thing. Every time Israel is attacked, they respond because they have to, otherwise they'll get, you know, more attacked by other people. So then they respond, and then every single time, the people that were the aggressors get, you know, some retribution and held accountable for their actions. They're like, oh my God. Like, it's been going on for centuries now. Every single time someone attacks Israel, Israel responds. And then they're like, oh my God, Israel attacked us. Unwarranted. Even, please don't look at that footage. What I will say is really interesting here. The entire news coverage is being silenced a lot by the algorithms. I tried to find for a video we were doing last week. I was trying to find a video of the attack on October 7th, that Hamas attacked Israel, right? And that's a fact. It happened. I was trying to find news coverage of where Hamas agents, two Hamas agents, went into a train in Israel and just slaughtered entire families on that train. I was trying to find any news coverage of that. It happened. It's out there. Al Jazeera Gaza documentary. Anyway, just think about what you're saying for a moment, then say it. I'm not talking about the country. I'm talking about the people. The people have been there for centuries. Every time they're attacked, they try to respond. And yeah, Palestinian supporters. I'm going to support a country that doesn't exist. So anyway, I was trying to find news coverage of October 7th because there were plenty of documentaries on it. On October 7th, and then I was trying to find news coverage of the attack that Hamas had on the train where they murdered hundreds of people in Israel. Weirdly, in trying to find that news coverage, or even news coverage of Iran sending missiles at Israel to attack it, all of those news stories are pretty much gone from the internet. Like, you can find them, but I was searching for specifically putting in like news coverage of this event on October 7th, and it took me about 20 pages on YouTube to find any actual coverage of it, any actual video clips of it happening for our video last week. So yeah, it was kind of like everything was just Hamas, Hamas, Hamas propaganda over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh my God. Just the amount of Hamas propaganda was overwhelming in trying to search for actual coverage of Israel being attacked. It was alarming. So that's probably why you're not seeing the truth. Someone shared with me like this post of like, oh, all these citizens were killed, but their source was Hamas. And I'm like, Hamas is gonna lie. They're the terrorist organization. They're gonna lie. The far right people can get pretty violent. We've seen a lot of violence from them. So honestly, what I would say is peacefully protest, stand up for your rights, and whenever not if, but when Donald Trump starts coming after people's rights, I would say, first off, point it out to all the Trump supporters of, see, we told you so. Because they have no problem right now trying to make it painful for us, you know? So we should have no qualms come January rubbing it in their face too, of like, this is what you voted for. Remember that. Peacefully protest. We saw Washington, D.C. get surrounded with National Guard yesterday. We saw it being protected by barriers and stuff like that, because if Trump lost, there would have been another insurrection, and the United States was afraid of it. In some ways, we're lucky that Trump won, because there was no violence yesterday night to overthrow the government, because he won the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and the Supreme Court all in one swoop. So it was alarming. But I want all the people that didn't vote for Kamala Harris because they thought a woman shouldn't be president, or whatever reason you had for not voting for Kamala Harris, whatever policy you thought that she was terrible on, just remember, for the next 4 years, you voted against it by not voting. You let Donald Trump in to do these horrible policies because you thought one or two policies she had weren't great. Okay, I don't think every policy Harris has is fantastic, but I also wanted my marriage to survive. I wanted my country to survive. I didn't sit home because, oh, she's a woman. I didn't sit home because, oh, she thinks the country should have the right to defend itself. I didn't sit home for stupid reasons. I went out, I stood in line for a half an hour, and I voted. My husband voted. It's so sad where we're at, but all we can do is fight like hell every day for our rights. They are going to be under attack. All we can do is fight like hell to make sure that this only gets so bad. That's all I can say. And just remember, come January 20th, when he's sworn in, that you voted for this. Republicans voted for Donald Trump. Democrats either voted for Kamala Harris or didn't vote at all, which was a vote for Donald Trump. So it's ridiculous. One final thing I want to do while we're streaming. A president that performed like one. Yeah. Think about all the things that Donald Trump has done. Okay. So like said, grab women by the, even things we can't repeat here because they're too weird. You think Gaza isn't facing a genocide despite credible news sources like Democracy? What credible news sources say that there's a genocide in Gaza? Okay. So we're making up things now. Apparently. So I'm just going to ignore that. Now, I wanted to look something else up before we went off the stream. And this is why we do editing normally. They're eating, yeah, he said they're eating their dogs and cats. He sent people to Ohio. JD Vance effed a couch. What other weird stuff did Donald Trump do? Yeah, he endorsed neo-Nazi parties. He said that people shouldn't have the right to their own bodies or health care. Trans people shouldn't exist, he said. What else? What other weird stuff? Thank you for becoming new members, Fox and Crew and Nadia. Thank you so much. We really love that. What else? He is a Russian asset working for the Kremlin. That's also something else Donald Trump is. So he's going to end all support for Ukraine and let Russia just take over. He wants to stop NATO. He wants name some other things Donald Trump has done. The stupid things. Yeah, there's a lot. He did a coup on the country. He tried to murder his own vice president. So, you know what? Actually, what we should do here is just maybe we should all just like message JD Vance and be like, you know what? Good luck. We know what happened to the last one. If I was Mike Pence right now, I would just send a letter to JD Vance of like, remember what he tried to do to me? Oh, and his vice president candidate, JD Vance, called him America's Hitler. Just perfect. Y'all voted for a guy that his running mates called him Hitler. That's I don't know how much more on the nose you can get. He made a concept of a plan for healthcare. He made his own Bible that he forced children to read in Oklahoma. He downplayed the virus, cost a lot of people their lives, said you should just go out and have fun. You should be able to go to church normally and all these other places normally. Oh, why are they shutting down the states even though it's a virus that kills people? Matt Dillhunty? Okay. Don't even know who they are. Probably for a reason. Anyway, I'll debate actual credible people. Anyway, he's a grifter. So what I've noticed in my comments, at least from Trump supporters, because for the past 3 months we've been letting comments just go, because there should have just been so many to like moderate that our moderating team is just like trying their best to keep up, but they can't. So we've had Epstein's. He rented Epstein's plane. He's like, I'm not a child molester, but I'm just gonna, I'm gonna rent his plane out. So anyway, there were so many things. But yeah, so like we were covering him, and we just saw a bunch of people comment from his supporters that they hated the same people that they do, and that's all that mattered to them. Like, they didn't vote for Donald Trump because they thought he was a good guy, or a lot of them genuinely commented that they are okay with him selling Bibles or shoes or watches or whatever, and they are okay with buying those products because they want to financially support the man who is trying to fight against the people that they hate. That's it. So while we're all sitting here going, oh my God, this is yet another grift, they're looking at it as, oh my God, I can support my cult leader more. We're all looking at it as, oh my God, this man stole $676 million from taxpayers during his time in office. And they look at it as, he's a billionaire now, so y'all can't complain that he's not a billionaire. It's like, he's a billionaire only because American taxpayers were robbed. So it's anyway, I am young and too ignorant. Yeah, sure. I'm a reporter. I've been doing this for 10 years. Actually, no, more like 15. And I get my facts straight before I speak. I don't understand why people don't discuss the theocrats' intentions to recriminalize sodomy and outlaw transgender exposure, i.e. the state of a trans person's body being seen. It's a good point. They constantly come after trans rights, and that was a big election ad from the Trump supporters. A lot of my trans friends and the team members here at PBR who are trans. By the way, if you don't know, we have 36 writers, researchers, editors, bunch of things, right? Producers, education advisors. So before we speak, we actually know what we're talking about. And a lot of people are like, oh, you only source yourself. Just to give you some ideas, right? This is how stupid Trump supporters were for the past month, especially past. I'll get back to your comment. I promise I'll get back to it. I'm sorry. I just have to point out how stupid this is, right? Let's see. No, don't sign out because I'm currently streaming. Okay, hold on. So let's say, right. All right. So here's a popular video, right?
Do you want to become a self-friend?
Okay, so people are like, oh my God, you only source yourself. ProfessorPride.com is our website, right? But if you go there, here's what you actually get. It's our blog, right? And people are like, oh, you only source yourself. We literally have the entire transcript of every episode, everything I've said, everything quoted. It's all here. This is, no, I'm sorry, you can't see what I'm talking about. I just realized that. I'm sorry. My bad. My bad. Okay, so if you're on one of our videos on YouTube, all you need to do, let me get to it here.
Now, some of us expected from a man who plays.
All right, so you go into the description of our video and ProfessorBride.com. That's literally our website, right? You click on that and you get this page from our website. This is literally ours, right? And people are like, this is your blog. Yeah, it's our blog, but it's also the entire transcript of the entire episode. This is every word I said in the entire episode sourced. So if you're like, oh, hey, he said about Trump playing golf 261 rounds while in office, I can literally click on that right now and get that source. This costs taxpayers $516,000 each round of golf. Okay, let's click on that. Now I can find that source, right? Great way to do this, by the way. Control F on a Mac, or what is it? Shift F on a Windows computer. 516. What was it? You can literally just find stuff through that most times. Or it's a number that we added up from two things here. Yeah, okay. It's a number we added up from two things there. But you can just hit Control F and find anything in that article that you want. Okay, like $50, right? Let's go to this, right? Control find 50. All right, yep, right here. You can just search for it. It's right there. And that's where we found that source at. So Trump supporters are like, oh, you only sourced yourself. Yeah, but we also have a transcript on that page of everything I said, every quote, every number sourced, you know? We do know how to fact check. So that's what a lot of Trump supporters weren't seeing. And they're like, yeah, I don't care about sources. Okay, well, then you don't care about anything. So I don't understand why people discuss the art. Yeah, so a lot of people in our country, this side of things, want sodomy to be outlawed. They want trans people to be outlawed. A big campaign like advertisement. I don't know if you saw it, but a lot of my trans friends, a lot of our trans teams members, a lot of them like football. I don't love football, American football. I don't really love it, but a lot of our team members watch it. And while they're watching it, they get a bunch of ads of like, there's only 2 genders. And it's like, that was a campaign, freaking ad for Donald Trump. Like his campaign put out, there's only 2 genders ad. That's so sad. Like, it's like, I don't know science, but let me put millions of dollars into this ad to show you I don't know anything about science. Like, that's what they were doing. So there were a lot of ads against trans people. And then trans people voted for him anyway. And I don't get it. There's nothing I understand. This data makes no sense to me at all. I'm hoping you can hear me. I'm trying to be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. No, none of this data makes sense to me. There's nobody here other than white males. That makes sense. Where's the other question at? Labor unions doesn't make sense to me. Christians does make sense to me. LGBT people, straight white males voted for Donald Trump. That is what I understand. Straight white males who are Christian voted for Donald Trump. That's the only data in all of this that I understand genuinely, because that is the only thing he wants. That is the only thing he advocated for, is straight white males. Also, why are the consequences cast in terms of abstractions like rights when more material consequences like prison and hacky cheap medical transition reversal imposed by force are at stake? That's true. I mean, when you get rid of abortion legally, you're still going to have abortions. When you get rid of medical transition for trans people, you're going to still have people that are like, no, I need this medical procedure. Like, it's a genuine need for people. So you're not going to get rid of it entirely. You're just going to make it unsafe, you know, because now they're going to be forced to get it elsewhere that's not in a safe environment. It's what we should have done. The true thing we should have done, in my opinion, January 7th, 2021, Donald Trump should have been in jail. That's it. He should have been in prison for the rest of his life because he committed treason against the United States of America. The crime of treason is punishable up to execution by the United States government. I do not understand why Donald Trump got away with it. I will never understand that. Republicans like Mitch McConnell, who I very much disagree with. I will be the first to say I'm a conservative Republican. I'm a fiscal conservative. Got the words messed up. It's late. Anyway, I've been up for a long time. I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'll be the first to admit I do not agree with Mitch McConnell on anything, right? It's so sad because even the Republicans in Congress don't agree with Trump. They had the opportunity to get rid of Donald Trump, hold him accountable for his own actions, and they chose not to, just because he's Trump. There would have been some, we're talking maybe like 5, that would not have won their re-election seat because it wasn't a stronghold for them in the next election. In 2022, some of them would have lost their re-election campaigns because it was back and forth. And if they didn't support Trump, they would have never gotten the support they need from their constituents. And I get that. But the RNC chose not to lose those 5 seats for 2 years until they can gain them back, rather than hold Trump accountable for treason. I will never understand that. They had the opportunity to get rid of him entirely for a completely legal and legitimate reason. And they still to this day have not convicted, like, he's a 34-time convicted felon, but his sentencing was put after the election here. It's sometime late November or something like that, right? So, like, now that he's president-elect, can you put a president-elect in prison? Can you do that? It's never been done before. Maybe you can. But I guarantee you, January 20th, the first thing he signs is going to be an immunity paper for himself. I guarantee that. So if you don't do it from now until January 20th, he can very well just at any time give himself immunity. Even if you do it now, it looks very, very political, like you're trying to imprison your opponent, rather than January 21st or January 7th, 2021, putting him in prison immediately for his actions, which is just honestly just a response to what happened. Like, they couldn't have done it quicker, you know? Like, you try to murder your own vice president and you're not in jail the next day. I don't understand that. If anyone else tried to murder the vice president of the United States, they would be in jail for the rest of their lives. Period. No questions asked. Donald Trump, 4 years later, has become president-elect again. Here we are. Because Democrats sat on their butt and wanted all of these court cases to happen this year, which made it look political, instead of holding him accountable at the time that they needed to. So here we are. I'll say thank you for joining us for the past 3 months here as we've been covering the election. We're going to try to get back to somewhat of normal content for the next couple months before Donald Trump takes office. We'll be covering news if it happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But we tried our best. And I will say, at the end of all of this, my husband and I had a conversation last night. We tried our best. We did everything we could. We did as many videos as possible to talk about how much of a threat Donald Trump was and how much of an ally Harris was, because she's an amazing ally. She has been an ally her entire life. I didn't have a bad word to say about her. And that's genuinely hard to do, because I'm very critical as a reporter of, like, you find some things you don't agree with. And I'm like, look, I don't agree with everything, but I couldn't find a bad thing to say about her. And we tried our best. My husband wrote some episodes for us because we were trying to come up with, trying to get as much content out as possible for people to understand the current news, because a lot of people were confused, and we have a platform that we could use, to tell the truth. we really tried. A lot of people tried their best, put everything in that we could, and that's the saddest part. It just didn't work. My husband and I did donate to the Harris campaign, and just wasn't enough. Just wasn't enough to convince people to get out and vote. So it's a bad day for America, a bad day for a lot of other countries worldwide. But at the very least, I will say January 2025, we will have a peaceful transition of power from Kamala Harris. That's all I will say. Because at the very least, that is what America needs. But inevitably, when Trump comes after anyone's rights, please stand out there and rub their fucking faces in it. See, we told you. This is what we feared all along. Please. Because it needs to get through their thick skulls that this is what they caused. And for anyone who didn't vote yesterday, if you're too young to vote, I understand. Because 18 years old and older, I understand that. I will always understand that. But if you're over 18 and you chose not to vote yesterday, for whatever reason, because you couldn't decide between the two or whatever, I don't want to hear a complaint from you for 4 years. Because you had the opportunity. A lot of younger people who could not vote yesterday because they weren't old enough are mourning this loss already. They're licking their wounds. A lot of young people have reached out to me and asked me how I'm getting through, making sure I'm okay. But they're also, you said my sister voted against my rights. My sister did too. My sister was sharing articles of how Trump was an ally of our community. They were opinion pieces, by the way, not real. My sister was private messaging members of my PBR team to try to stop me from talking about Trump. There were a lot of things that happened because of Trump. It tore a lot of families apart. It tore mine apart. I'm probably not going to speak to my sister just because yesterday I'm 99% certain she voted for Trump. I'm 1% certain that she didn't vote at all, which is just as bad. Like, she could have voted for my right to be with my husband. She decided to go against that for whatever reason. Because she's being told by the other side of her family that, Trump was amazing. And Trump's going to stop kids from going to school and having gender surgery on the front desk of the classroom. And Trump's going to stop kitty litter boxes from being put in the bathrooms. None of that ever happened, by the way. It's crazy. But my sister believed it, so. There were a lot of things that happened. It's going to take a long time to forgive. But please, no matter how long it takes you to forgive the people in your life, or even if you don't want to, I do understand that. I will never forgive the people in my life that voted against my right to be married after coming to my wedding. I will never forgive the people that voted against my right to be free. But most importantly, even if I do someday choose to forgive them, and it will be after they apologize greatly, I will never forget. And please do not ever forget what happened this week. No matter where you are in the world, never forget what happened. You can forgive, but you cannot forget. Because the moment you forget, this can happen again just as easily. Especially in 2 years when the Senate and the House are up for re-election again and it's the midterms, you need to vote. We cannot have a Congress that is Trump-sided again. We're about to see how dangerous that can be in January. So please don't ever give him that again. Anyway, that is all for tonight. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for your super chats if you sent one in. Thank you all for sharing your opinions in the comments. Thank you all for being with us on this journey for the past couple months, especially. I know it's been hard. I know we've scared a lot of people. I know it's scary to talk about these things. I do understand that. But we had to. We had to talk about them. No matter how scary they were, we had to discuss them because nobody else was. And I thought, and my husband thought, that we owed you the truth above all else. It might have scared some people, but you have the right to be scared when the truth is scary. Always remember that. Have a great night, everyone. I know, one more time I'm wearing it. So thank you all for joining us. Have a great night. Stay safe. And just know that we love you guys. And we'll always be here for you guys. As long as we possibly can, we'll keep broadcasting. So, much love and rainbows. Peace out. Peace. And thank you all for becoming members as well.